Soccer games are plentiful on the PlayStation. Let's make no mistake about that. There's an absolute ton of them out there. And while we did have early renditions of games that would see some success on the PlayStation, but they had to set the standard of what would move forward. And in late 1997, early 1998, we would get FIFA Road to World Cup 98, which would set that standard to become one of the greatest football games ever in existence, and really set the world alight in terms of how football was looked and perceived upon the world of video games at that time, as it was very authentic. While it may not be the most fluid or polished example of games that we're seeing, but it definitely, like I said, it set everything in the right direction. If anything, I consider it to be my favourite FIFA game that I've ever played on the PlayStation, as it had a really good balance of everything that was there, between modes, teams, clubs, international teams. The ambience and atmosphere was exceptional. It really captured all the real life elements of the game at the time. Plus you had the indoor football mode, which was exceptional. It was so much fun playing that game, a blast if you were playing it with your mates, and it became pretty much the best selling footy game and one of the best selling games of that time. So it was of no surprise that a few months later after the game's release, we would see World Cup 98 that would release literally only weeks before the World Cup tournament. That would see releases on the PlayStation, Nintendo 64, Windows PC, and even with the Game Boy Color. And this game would also capitalise on the success seen in Road to World Cup 98 and would become a very popular game, and often considered by many to be one of the best football games on the PlayStation, as it is a very heavy fan favourite among gamers out there. Many people that I do be chatting to on the channel, when they're leaving comments, they often talk about their love for this particular game. While they did love 98 and even games after it, World Cup 98 is among some of their favourite football games ever, and I can definitely agree with that, and I can see why. Now, even for myself, I did own the game, and there are definitely some noticeable differences compared to Road to World Cup 98. It is a little bit more polished in terms of the visual department, and there's definitely more tweaks to the overall control systems and AI dynamics. As with Road to World Cup 98, even if you put the game on, say, medium or normal difficulties, after a period of time when you get familiar with the game, you can understand the various quirks and nuances, and you can understand what to do and how to avoid different types of elements in regards to tackles and stuff, and you can make for a very easier experience. But with World Cup 98, it is slightly different, as you do have to put a lot more work in to get the benefits out of it, as the AI is a lot more aggressive. No more can you really run round players as such, as they will tackle you a lot more, and 9 times out of 10 they will win the ball off you a lot more, so you really have to work for your rewards in this game. But the rewards are so much more satisfying upon achieving them. It just has a really good balance of everything in between. Like I said, I definitely consider this to be one of the greatest soccer games ever released on the PlayStation, even though it doesn't have the same level of content in it that would have been in Road to World Cup 98, that actually had access to club teams and different gameplay modes with the likes of the indoor football mode. All of this is gone in World Cup 98, as it only focuses on the teams in the World Cup at that time, but it's still a very, very good solid title. And I think that was always the caveat and always the issue with this game, because there was very little in terms of length of time from both games being released. There was literally only between 6 to 8 months between both games being released apart from each other, that it left a lot of people confused and not really sure of which game to buy. Because, right, World Cup 98, don't get me wrong, solid game, fantastic game, but a lot of people often had that question: why would I pay full price for this game when I already have Road to World Cup 98, which essentially is the same game? There's just a bit more tweaks in terms of polish and overall appeal to it. But now, people, fans of the game and that wanted it, would have bought it, yeah, no doubt about that, but not everybody would have fallen into that category. For myself, I did buy the game, but I waited for a while. Like, I got it literally a few months after the World Cup, and the price dropped on it significantly. At the time, I think I got it for only like between 10 and 15 Irish pounds at the time, which was very, very cheap, but you got one hell of a game for that price. Yeah, it doesn't have the same appeal that, like I said, its earlier predecessor had in terms of the amount of content that was available. If you wanted a good solid footballing experience, this was one of the best to play at the time on the PlayStation. It really was. It was a good solid title, and still is even by today's standards, because even going back to playing the game now after all these years, you still have to work for everything. It's still not straightforward. You will struggle with it, but when you do achieve success, it's all the more satisfying.
Goal kick taken then. Good header. Yes, good control. Left his marker. Great save from the keeper. Oh, that looked in all the way. How did he get to that?
Not an easy save. He did well there, John.
Suarez. Just the odd goal between them here at half-time. A one-goal lead enough, do you think, Chris? So here we go then with the second half. Played clear. Collected by the keeper. De Boer. And into the hands of the goalkeeper then. It was a good stop.
Like over the years, when we look at future World Cups, like even on with regards to the PlayStation 2 generation, even up to PS3, you would see many World Cup versions of games being released by EA on the systems. But I don't think any of them had the impact that World Cup 98 had. I think this was the one that was really focused on that, and the fact is that EA Sports around this time really had nailed down the concept of football with 3D graphics and visuals and control styles. The only competitor it had really at that time was the likes of the ISS Pro series that was starting to hit its own stride. We had the actual soccer series at that time, but the gameplay mechanics and styles of that, while they were still good, had become outdated, which is considering like the sake of 3 years between the PlayStation being released and this game being released. A massive change in dynamics in the space of 3 years was insane when we think about it. But still, like I said, the PlayStation had something for everybody. You either were a FIFA person, you were either an ISS Pro person, you were either an actual soccer person, and then there was a sea and a flood of other games that were released, especially loads of games that were released in Japan that I never knew about until the last year or two, really, as recording this video. I have covered a lot of other football games on the channel. There'll be a link to a playlist in the description, as there's just so many of them, and there's so many quirky and interesting titles, right? Some of them aren't as good as others, but still, they're worth trying if you're a soccer fan. But I think among the best of the best that's on the PlayStation, World Cup 98 is definitely up there with that, 100%. And I'm sure many of you would agree. It has all the licensed kits, player names, merchandise, licenses. It has all of the elements that made the World Cup of 98 what it was. A very unique spectacle, and this game just helped to influence that in all regards. But I would love to know your thoughts of World Cup 98 for the PlayStation, and what did you think of the game overall? Would this be your favourite FIFA game seen on the PlayStation, or which other games in the series were your favourites? So be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other types of soccer games, like I mentioned, that I have covered previously on the channel, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And you can also check out the playlist here on screen to see a lot more of those other games that I have covered previously in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.